Good morning. The title of this panel is View from the Top, How Technology Drives the Business of Live TV. Good morning. My name is Jeff Jacobs, and we're going to introduce our panelists in just a second. Beforehand, let me just introduce myself, just 2 minutes. New Yorker, and grew up at NBC Sports for about 12, 15 years. Transitioned to Viacom about 10 years ago, where I work with now the Viacom Music and Entertainment Group, MTV, Comedy, Spike, a few other things. And it's been a good ride. I grew up in sports television, which has always been a igniter, an accelerator of broadcast technology. Let's start with Mr. Vince Pace here on my left. And fellas, why don't you just introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Vince Pace, and I have a background in the entertainment industry dating back to, 25 years now. Started out in underwater, moved over to 3D, and have landed with VER to run their camera technology group. We're really focused on some of the models that Josh just outlined on how we can present the technology in a more compelling way to the entertainment model, which part of it is to save money, and the other part is to increase demand from the public as to unique and compelling shots. So looking forward to this discussion.
Tom Sahara, Vice President of Technology and Operations for Turner Sports. Actually met Jeff in his previous lifetime in sports broadcasting. But at Turner Sports, I oversee all the remote operations and technical operations of our sports productions that spans from linear all the way to digital. So much of what Josh talked about in his presentation, we're immersed in that currently, trying to figure out how to turn that linear model, modernize it into digital, and how to take the digital pennies and turn them into dollars. So that's basically what we try to do over at Turner Sports.
I'm Peter Kimball with NEP U.S. Mobile Units. About 90% of my work is music festivals, where throughout the past 10 or 11 years we provided trucks and technical support and consulting to just about every major music festival in North America. This year, it seems to be growing. This year, I think we pretty much doubled the number of music festivals we did, everything from Lollapalooza, Coachella, Outside Lands Fest, you name it. We're lucky enough to do it, and it's live television and it's music, which I feel really lucky to be in.
I am Brad Sexton. I'm President and CEO of Live Media Group Holdings. Our company started in 2008 as Live Media Group. We started out as a live production partner for a lot of our entertainment, music, and now sports clients. The company, as time has gone on, we've evolved from just that production company, and we have different divisions. So we have Live Mobile Group, which fortunately and unfortunately, we're in the mobile group business. People always ask me, why the hell are you guys in the mobile group business? Well, we have no choice. We have to, because the sheer volume of work that we produce for our clients requires a mobile unit and satellite. So that's one other side of the company. And then we have LMG NOC, which is a downlink center, where we encode live for web and mobile. As Tom said, it's exploding. The digital pennies are now digital dollars. I'm sorry, the dimes are now quarters and now dollars.
Digital dimes.
Yes.
Still 1/10 of linear.
There you go. So we also have a technology called Now Live, and it's a video platform for web and mobile.
So this is a great panel because I can't see the guys. The chairs should be back, but this is a great panel because what they've put together for you guys today is we have here up on the stage the creator, the enabler, the executor of the plan, the MacGyver, and the empowerer. So usually these panels are just for the same schmoes or for the same guys. And here we have all 5 aspects of the production process. So that's a lot of fun. So in the next 30 minutes or so, we should get some good mileage out of them. In addition, I want to say something about technology and live TV. First of all, for the sake of today's discussion, fellas, let's not call it live TV, or at least the elephant in the room, or we're past the elephant. We're like at the end of the zoo in the souvenir shop. For today, let's just call live TV live content viewing, because we all know, and we're all past this. We're all past this. Where the viewer ultimately watches the content and views the show, hears the story, is not about the 40-inch TV above the fireplace anymore. It's on one of 8 devices. So we're all past that. We're past that. And if you don't get that, I'll bring the guy with the suspenders back up, and he can go through the PowerPoint one more time. But just for the sake of today, let's call this live content viewing, because everyone on the stage is involved in storytelling or event production or TV production, and we all know it's not just about the TV. TV now has just a much broader sense in the word. So we're all past that. We're all big boys and girls. After all, everyone here in the room is really a visual storyteller and or a purveyor of content. So again, where the viewer ultimately watches, or the distribution methods, really shouldn't matter. Technology and emerging technology has played such an important role. And why I've always loved, and it's always been my thing, maybe coming from sports and sports Olympics, has always been one of the, again, accelerators of technology, just because the opportunity is there. You know, I look in the room, I see people like John Faratzis and Jerry Steinberg, some people who have totally embraced emerging technology before its time to enable storytelling or to enable broadcasting, especially in sports, to grow. Long before there was a 1st and 10 line, I remember working with John on video, virtual graphics on screens, and what Jerry did with audio back in the early MLB days. Today, you can't do a football game or maybe even any sports event without virtual graphics, stuff that we just toyed with at NBC in the early 90s. But moving back to these guys, fellas, emerging technologies always played a part in sports and event and entertainment broadcasting. Who wants to start us off and discuss a little bit about some of the latest adventures with technology that's enabled you to tell stories and or produce events that otherwise would not be able to be produced? Richard, festivals? Put you on the spot. Festivals, start us off.
Oh, me?
Yeah, Richard.
Yeah. Well, we pretty much utilized everything that sports, and Tom probably pioneered in sports, you know, next to me here. We took everything from Turner and applied it to music festivals, whether it's RF cameras, robotic cameras, POV, social networking, Instagram, Facebook. All that is one big, pretty much, it's almost a social networking experience. I mean, I think we've talked about this in the past, that, you know, tickets to music festivals tend to sell out even before the lineup comes out. So people are buying into the experience. It's basically one big tribe that everyone gets together, whether it's Coachella and, you know, in fancy clothes from LA, or Bonnaroo, and everyone smells like mud and whatever. But it's basically, it's a one big experience. So, I mean, I have 3 kids. They've all been to festivals, and they always buy their tickets or get free passes because they know me before the lineup even comes out, before they even know. But they trust that the content providers, in fact, we do Hangout Fest with Jeff, MTV, and the kids buy into the social networking phenomena of being together, connecting through their cell phones primarily, and it's almost like a community of experience. And so while we may not be cutting edge, we use it all. Our clients use it. We use it to communicate via screens. We have, in many festivals, we have up to 50 or 60 screens we feed content through, so kids can find out where their friends are, or their parents can find out where their kids are. And basically what we do is we utilize just about everything we possibly can to make that community of experience a meaningful and a really rewarding experience for the fans as well as for the artists.
And good point. Going a little further, I think with digital and web nowadays, you know, the technology is available to give users more control of the viewing experience. You take a music festival, take March Madness as a perfect example. What television gives me is the linear single feed. Yes, I can change channels, but with digital and mobile web, I have the ability to control my own experience now with technology. I can watch 4 things at one time. I can watch in picture-in-picture mode, and then also at the same time be able to interact socially without having to leave that video viewing experience. So I think that, I mean, your original question was about technology and where it's trending and what's available today. Those are some things that I think differentiate the digital world from the linear television world.
Well, I think you have to go back to the word television, and what is television to this new millennial generation? Television is really just content. And so when you look at producing programming, you really have to look at how do you deliver that content, whatever that consumer is looking for, how do you make it available to them on whatever platform they have. So whenever we go into producing programming, it's not just what's on the big screen hanging on the wall. How do we reach the people who can't be in front of the big screen? Are they mobile? Some of them live off social. How do we connect with them? How do we feed them the individual pieces of an event that engage them? If it's a music festival, it's a particular band. If it's a sport, it might be a particular team or a particular player on a team. So we really want to make available that content that individual is interested in and make it as easy for them to consume as possible. And that's really hard to do because it's an infinite variable. So how do you do that? And that's really where we spend a lot of time trying to figure that out. And I think whoever does figure that out, they'll be the one that gets to retire on some great island somewhere. But that's really the transition that we're in. We went from a very mass market to now we're dealing with an individual market. So we're marketing to every individual consumer. So that's where we look to technology to help facilitate that. And who knows, someday someone might have the answer, but right now we're still working on it.
Well, one of the things I've noticed over the last year to 18 months is, I kind of grew up in a world that was very strongly driven through cinema, and the camera systems that were related to that target market for storytelling was vastly different than the ones that were used in live TV or sports production. And over the last 18 months or so, that border has been crossed many a times. The use of larger sensor cameras in storytelling for live production and mixed in with longer lensing cameras that do either back of house or, more of the sniper rifle type shots. It's just been amazing to me to see the technology move forward to such a degree where the storytelling aspect can, utilize camera systems that we would have purchased and allocated to a cinema market in a reality production or a multi-camera live event production. And so, I think to the point of overlap that Josh brought up, we're seeing a tremendous amount of shared resources going into the storytelling definition, and there's no question when a larger sensor camera is introduced, there's an intimacy to it, there's a shallow depth of field, there's a way of really, using kind of the pun of focusing on your subject when you're up close and proximate to it. And then, with the introduction of the 4300, we now have the long lens solution, if you will, to be back of house and to contribute to those shots that when we were just focused on cinema in the live entertainment world, we couldn't do. There was no long lens solution. So it's really interesting to me how they're blending together on the storytelling platform more and more moving forward.
Yeah, the 4300 makes the 4200 look like two cans in a string. So it's no brainer. But seriously, folks, but along those lines, Vince, talk about the crossover that you've seen over the years, or maybe you could take us more in depth, and then Peter, maybe you have something to say about this. The crossover between cinema, what I would call broadcast TV, but I'm just putting broadcast up in quotes, and digital production. Again, I'm putting up quotes. The crossover between cinema shooting, broadcast TV shooting, digital. Again, I'm doing TV like this, but we all know what TV means. Digital TV shooting and storytelling. Talk about the difference in technologies and the crossover and who's benefiting the most and where we're making our money on that. And then maybe, Peter, you could reference that over to like festivals and such.
Well, I think for me, it's really that amortization platform. I think the days are gone where we could just focus on a cinema-based technology and expect that sector of the entertainment population to cover the costs of that platform. I think it's really critical that the technology that we bring forward and we encourage the manufacturers to offer up has that ability to cross over into these different markets. Just from from my company's perspective, we need ways of amortizing this, and we do it in several ways. There's a modularity to our approach of how we support production, whether it be in flight packs or housed in an office trailer or a mobile unit. But also when we're servicing platforms like reality TV, for us to take, let's just take from a lensing standpoint, some of the cabrios that were introduced from Fujinon, the Canon lenses, 17 to 120. We're probably the largest purchaser of these, and most people would say, man, you have a big cinema market, but that's not true anymore. A good 60% of those are being amortized over the live TV market. So I think we're on a different horizon, but the fundamentals remain the same. If I walk into a director on a cinema basis, he's going to talk about how does the technology contribute to his storytelling, and how are people going to notice a difference in the work that we do. And that's no different when we walk into a television show or a live broadcast or a sports production. There's a real focus on what makes it more entertaining to the public, irrespective of the different deliverables. I think we concentrate a lot more on what makes production more economic, what shared resources can we bring to the table that weren't available to that director and producer before, and where they distribute it is a secondary conversation to what we bring to the table. But there's a lot more opportunity out there for manufacturers to service the industry as a whole. And for directors, producers, and broadcasters to utilize those emerging technologies in a new and different way. And you bring up the 4300, the beauty of that camera, it has a high frame rate capability, it has a 4K, it has a zoom in capability. So, even taking that model, what we used to say as just a camera that did one thing and delivered one thing to production is no longer the case. We could put it into a mode that services different demands on the same product. And that benefits us as a provider to entertainment because we can focus one single product on different markets very easily.
I've got to take the opportunity and ask you, because we don't usually get a Vince Pace. You mentioned 4K. Are the reality shows shooting 4K? Are the network multicam shows and the reality shows, what percentage of them are shooting 4K?
I think that's a misnomer to focus just on 4K. It's not going to go anywhere if you do that. I think when we start to talk about what does a larger sensor bring to the table that's capable of 4K, I think is a whole different discussion. And in that capacity, when we talk about shallow depth of field and those tools, yes, reality is exploiting those functions that are unattainable on a 2/3 inch or 16 millimeter type mentality. And so I think that's, we're stuck on this thing about 4K for some reason. And, we leave HDR behind, we leave, this interest on the viewer to really have an experience that is almost true to life on their display screen. And I think, a lot of manufacturers are focused on that. Unfortunately, it becomes a numbers game.
So the reason, I hear you. The reason I brought it up is because, 4K is a stigma. We're not turning this into a 4K thing. And as a member of the advisory board or whatever of the sports video group, who's partners with today's summit, I go to these dinners, and all anyone ever wants to talk about is Fakakta 4K. And where I come from, your talk earlier was actually very encouraging to me. You're telling me that reality shows and broadcast TV are renting this caliber of technology, this caliber of lenses. That's very encouraging to me in a world where budgets are stagnant, the fact that producers still want that quality, and the networks are demanding it, and the viewers are appreciating it. I love that. That was very encouraging to me. That's why I brought up the 4K. In my small world, we are, in fact, utilizing some 4K technology, just because it was brought up. But in all fairness, we don't utilize 4K as a broadcast method or distribution method. We use it as a production tool. So on a Teen Wolf, just to be able to shoot wide and then in post pan and scan, that's where our benefit is, and that's fine. I'm sure you're fine with that, and that's great. And that's just that's probably more common than less. Anyone else want to talk about the crossover? Peter, do you have anything on the crossover technology through the different genres?
Well, our company, company-wide is looking at 4K production. We don't do a lot of it right now. The festivals especially, in fact, one of our clients, Stephen Warner from Third Wave, we look at 4K every year and look at budgets and decide how we're going to use it and how we're going to produce it. But the key thing is that when we do, like for instance, a festival, a lot of us actually here, we cover an event. We don't have control necessarily over the content. So we're there at the courtesy of the promoter. So what we're doing is we're telling a story, we're telling an experience. And because the band starts at 8 o'clock, we have no control necessarily over what they do, how they do. So we have to plan for spontaneity. What we end up doing is we may shoot it in 23:9:8 to make it look like film. We'll probably have a lot of cameras out there. So rather than like a single form like film, where maybe you have one camera and we know what the story will be, for us, we're discovering what the story is, throughout the weekend. It may be the weather. It may be someone is sick. It may be an incredible performance at stage number 4 or whatever. So basically what we're doing there is we're discovering with the viewer at the same time, this is the kind of, I like to call it a community of experience. We're experiencing this all together. So if something great happens, we all experience it together. It's a really a cool moment for us. So I think that's how I may not have answered your question, but we pretty much are, and I think when Tom does NBA basketball, same thing. You're covering the experience, what's going to happen. And so we don't necessarily go out with a vision of what story we're going to tell. We go out about the only vision we have is we're going to share this experience with consumers on different formats.
So along those lines, Tom, and then maybe afterwards, Brad, let's get this more back to the creative. Once you start with the 24.93p, it goes in a dark hole. Let's bring this back to a little something more creative, Tom. So, Tom, I was just watching the World Series on TBS, or whatever it was, divisionals with the Mets, Cubs, and of course you're famous for what you did with CBS for March Madness, the quad triple play, or whatever it's called. Bring us back to more of the creative side, because it's interesting with technology and emerging technologies. People come to us all the time, and they're like, oh, this technology works. It's amazing. And we're like, I have no doubt that the technology works. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. What is our production use for the technology? What's our application for such technology? Tom, can you give us a couple of references? NCAA March Madness, postseason baseball, NBA, some of the newer technologies that you're using to aid you and aid our viewers with storytelling and telling the story, what's going on?
Well, yeah, we basically take all of these technologies and really allow the production to explore the characteristics of each to enhance the storyline. In the case of cameras with large sensors where you can get shallow depth of field, we use them on features where you really want that nice, really up close, intimate feel. And then when we get to the game coverage, we have small POV cameras which have almost nearly infinite depth of field, 3rd-inch sensors, but they're plantable, so we can put them in spots where you normally can't put a standard video camera. The higher frame rate cameras, the 4300s, even going up to 8 times, has allowed us to keep a very consistent look across all of our replays. So you can cut from a live standard camera to a now 8 times slow motion replay, and the colors match perfectly. And so what the end result is, you get this seamless broadcast where you can go from full speed replay to 1/3 times replay to 8 times replay seamlessly. And so from a viewer perspective, you really get to, you don't sense these changes. To you, it's just a very smooth, seamless display of this amazing athletic performance. And that's what these tools have been able to provide us, is the ability for our production teams to use the best tool. And that's where technology has really driven this, is it's lowered that obstacle of introduction of these technologies. Before, you had to be the big broadcaster, you had to be this mega media company to afford these technologies, but now the cost has come down considerably, where now even music festivals, even independent productions are using technologies like plantable cameras. You know, the GoPros are a classic example. Now you can buy a 4K GoPro for $400. So again, it's really democratized video production in the sense of the only obstacle is your imagination. So if you have a good idea, there's a wide tool set that is available to you, everything from large sensor cameras all the way down to GoPros that can be used to tell that story. So I think what's really, from our end, what's really been where we've concentrated a lot of effort is how to implement these technologies in as seamless a manner as possible, so it's not a burden on the production. So the production doesn't have to think about or worry about the technology. It's just magic. They just say, I want a camera here, I want a shot to look like this, and we can choose the right tool to fit that need. So that's where I think technology's really been the enabler, because all it takes is just you to come up with an idea of what you want, and now we can provide that tool without breaking the budget.
Tom, follow-up question, and again, you don't always get a Tom Sahara, so I want to ask you a question while we have you. On site, in the production compound, how much greater is your presence on site nowadays with all of the extra screens, needs, requirements, all of the, we're not just pushing it up with a satellite and a backup fiber anymore. We're feeding also to Snapchat and Insta and Face and Dot. How much more of a presence do you have on site nowadays? How much more of a burden is it? How much more of an opportunity is it? What's the presence on site? You know,
It's a rack of gear. It's maybe one or two people.
that's it? Or I guess you're doing a lot back at home.
So yeah, we do a lot back in our facilities, but much of it is driven by the technology. Technology allows us to transport multiple camera feeds from the venue back to our studios. So we have the ability to have alternate camera views. Technology allows people to have virtual control of things. So we have a rack of gear that's controlled from the studio. And that's all been enabled by technology. It used to be where we had half a dozen others supporting these different platforms out on site. But again, the technologies allowed, the virtualization of technologies allowed that to remain at home and just extend the reach into the venue. So there's been a lot of this. Again, the technology's really been the enabler to make these types of initiatives possible at minimal cost.
Right, I guess faster.
There's a small investment in the initial hardware, but we're not talking about the hundreds of thousands of dollars that it took to do a production in the past.
Right, I guess faster technologies enabled people not to travel and to utilize the encoders and all the toys back at home. Right. So that's a big plus. Brad, Sexton, your thoughts?
I agree 1,000%. What we're seeing, as I look 2-3 years ago to where we are today, and with transmission, the ability to send out a production truck, I mean, we all use the same cameras, send out that truck, transmit 8 feeds back to a studio, have a crew there, whether it be a music festival, whether it be a sporting event. In the technology now, I can send 2 or 3 live sporting events back to my control center, and I've got a crew there that's going to cut a show. They've got EVS, they've got graphics. With satellite now and the muxing gear being able to take MPEG-4 and send those multiple feeds, not only is it a cost savings for networks and clients, but it's an opportunity to be able to take those same feeds and encode them live for consumers to cut their own show, to be in control. So you look at the efficiencies now, having a crew do 2 games in one day, like Tom says, everything's being sent back to the studio. And there's another big opportunity that we've been playing with, I guess. It's 360. Again, 360 cam, live with your mobile phone, live on the web, being able to take that phone and simply turn. As you turn, so does said feed. These are the kind of tools, these are the kinds of opportunities that we all have at our fingertips nowadays.
Yeah, 360 VR is probably the next hot thing. Everyone's coming out with their gear for Christmas. I've personally shot a tremendous amount of 360 VR, and we're experimenting a lot because it's a lot of trial and error, a lot of R&D, but it's a lot of fun, and it's an exceptional storytelling tool because, of course, it's not just what's in the director's line cut, but it's also the story so many times, what else is going on around. So it's an exceptional tool. I'm actually so excited about it. A few more minutes. Our previous speaker, Josh, mentioned in one of his slides that budgets aren't going up or they're staying still. But the truth, and that's encouraging, and I like to think that in our broadcast endeavors, the budgets are at least going up every year, at least cost of living, because the jib operator is going to ask for another 3% more. So our budgets have to increase a little bit, otherwise we're going to start suffering our creative. Nonetheless, the budgets we do have to work with are the digital workflows. You know, the fact of the matter is, the digital production workflow will never have the budget the linear does. The digital business model is just not there yet. We all know this. And if the business model is not there, then the budget's not going to be there to support it. So very often, sadly, we're producing multi-camera shows for digital with, say, $200,000 instead of for broadcast of $750 and above. So could we talk a little bit, just in a few more minutes left, about how emerging technologies, or how what's now existing technologies, have helped us produce content not even cheaper, because for me it's not about the money, but for digital, how emerging technologies and how technology has enabled us to produce content that we simply otherwise would not been able to have produced. I'll just tee it up while you're thinking. I'll just tee it up. A few years ago, we noted that this wasn't going to happen. We noted we weren't going to get the production budgets for digital. So we started utilizing, God help me for giving them a plug, we started utilizing like the NewTek TriCaster because we knew we weren't going to be able to get a control room, and we knew it was easy to call B&H and just get one on a moment's notice and be able to produce. Recently, we did a show where we drove a bus. I don't even know why we did. We drove a bus from Memphis to New Orleans for 24 hours. You just can't do that with a satellite truck. So the bonded cell phone technology now, you know, there's the LiveViews, the TV, there's a few companies now where we just put an antenna on the bus and we drove it for 24 hours. Again, that was emerging technology that enabled us to produce content we otherwise would not be able to. You mentioned GoPros, Tom. Again, it's so easy to just run down the street to B&H Photo and pick up a few GoPros. They're not expensive. They enable us to produce content. Fellas, can someone talk to that, how emerging technology has enabled us to produce content we otherwise would not be able to produce?
You know, I think what it is, just real quick, is it's more the personnel. I think we need smarter people. You know, actually the GoPro is incredible, or the Blackmagic, you know, record decks and things like that. They're fairly inexpensive, and you can, you know, rent a ton of them for very low cost or buy a lot of them for low cost. But what we find is that it's the personnel. It's an experienced engineer that knows, you know, computers, and, you know, that's what we're learning. These tools are incredible, give us incredible opportunity. As you say, I hate to use the GoPro so much, or robotic cameras. What we find is that our need for qualified, very experienced, very smart, forward-thinking engineers is what's driving our growth. is that, people come to us because of our people. The cameras, the 4300, from VER or from anyone else is the same 4300. It's the people that operate and install that equipment is what helps us grow and helps us with that message.
Right, it's someone with that vision of how to take the technology and how to create something new or something different with it. And that's, again, where we put a lot of time and effort, is trying to understand how these tools can be used for different purposes, not necessarily what they were intended for many times. So that's what's fun about this, is it's all new, it's all different, and there really are no bad ideas, because as we see, these disruptive business models are just things that no one would have ever conceived a couple of years ago.
I think a big point is these satellite production models that are really starting to become more common. We did the REMI model for ESPN and stuff. I think that's really going to feed that pipeline on a more cost-effective platform. So it's going to be interesting to me as that methodology grows, where we're just sending back the feeds and then they cut them any way they want for distribution to the different, screens that they're creating as deliverables. I really think that's going to be the key factor to feeding an enormous amount of content, whether it's alumni-based or, secondary type demand or third-tier demand. So I think that's where we're seeing it go.
Brad, final thought?
Strategic partnerships. I think that if you can. Look, the reason we started our company and we've grown and created the different divisions is to serve clients, to create the efficiencies. Having one team be the quote-unquote producer and creative executor, production equipment, satellite equipment, downlink, encoding, and a technology. Our company's able to do the 365 Yahoo Live Nation concert series one every single day, because we do it all. Because we've created now an efficiency. We've created a company that it's a one-stop shop. And we actually, we work with companies like NEP all the time, with VER all the time as well. So it's about it's about creating the opportunities for efficiencies for our clients.
Cool. Please join me in thanking the panelists.